of owning a cafe and other heroic deeds by Beware the Tistero. Chapter 29. Bittersweet. By the time Sunday ended, Obabaka-san had drawn up some amazing plans, outlined the archway he'd knock through when allowed for the cafe and the upstairs apartment, and had promised that a friend of his could do the plumbing, too. He was an experienced man, similarly forced out of his job due to bigger contracting companies. The landlady's son had come by, as promised, and he'd rewarded him with a chocolate sponge cake layered with jam and chantilly cream. He was a man who could grow and shrink at will with 4 arms. It had been easy for him to bring the futon to bedding. He'd been delighted and said that he'd be more than happy to help out when the building work started as well. Then, as discussed, he and the boys had transformed their current living room into a camp-out setting. It had been a little fiddly, but they'd managed to craft tents out of bed sheets, old curtain rods, and pillows. Then bowls of corn chips, pocky, and mochi were passed around as they'd lay on their fort-like futons, talked about the kinds of cats they were going to adopt, and played a few rounds of Uno. Hitoshi and Dabi, so much more competitive than even gleeful Tomura, who'd rushed to the boy's aid, had gotten into a heated match that the child ultimately won, his little form ecstatic as the teen conceded and gave him his last strawberry pocky as a prize. The child had then snapped it into 4 pieces and shared it out amongst them, which had it made him and the other boys melt not at all. However, the night's frivolity couldn't save them from Monday. He'd woken up at his usual time and gone on a run with a focused, somber Katsuki and a determined yet slightly tearful Izuku. He left the iris-eyed boy to sleep in. He'd need all of his strength for what they'd face that afternoon. Then, after coming home and whipping up tamagoyaki for them all, the teens had offered to take the tots shopping.
You want to look your best when you see your mom, don't you?
With the decayed quirk insisting that he pay for the trip and any clothing bought.
I never had a little brother to spoil, so just let me, okay?
Allowing the kind gesture and texting Dabi to tell him if his partner went overboard, Shouta had watched them head out at 9, waved at some of the customers who told him that, "We look forward to seeing you tomorrow, Aizawa-san," and got on with contacting the child's school. The principal had been full of understanding. She told him that a study pack was being put together and that Hitoshi's homeroom teacher, the same one who'd given him an A+ on his report, would be bringing it by for him that evening. She'd wish him well, wished him luck, and had given him her personal phone number. "We are a school that doesn't tolerate bullying, Aizawa-san. However, children can be insensitive, so please, if Shinso-kun needs or wants anything, do not hesitate to call me." That was reassuring, at least. Then at 10, with all of the calls placed and Tomura having sent him a photograph of his ward in a smart white suit with a navy blue blazer and pants in an outlet store, he'd smiled, typed back a thank you, and praised his big brothering skills, which were on par with Dabi's by now.
The outraged message that the older teenage shot back.
"It was my idea to go to the store, you know. He's got a long way to go before he reaches my level, you crazy not-so-old guy." A bit hilarious and endearing. Sighing to himself, he and Hitoshi couldn't go to the precinct before 1400. He decided to keep himself busy by calling Kohaku-san and getting his prep work done for tomorrow. "Ah! That Mimi-chan is quite a mix, isn't she? I'm free this evening after 1800. Shall I come over so we can see what forms you need to fill in?" Chopping up fruit, pickling vegetables, steeping syrups, whipping up various batters, and portioning rice wasn't exactly glamorous, but it was necessary, and it'd be irrational to waste this precious time, wouldn't it? Once completed, he made a couple of orders, received a few as well. They'd have to start shopping for cat toys, crates, beds, litter boxes, and the like soon, too. Finding a decent vet was also a priority. As he moved bags of flour from the back step where the delivery man had placed them, he heard his laptop. Ding! Petting his hands, he walked out of the kitchen's larder to where he temporarily placed his laptop, which usually lived in his bedroom, on the back bench where Dabi usually ate his breakfast, his eyebrows lifting as one of the feeler emails he'd sent out to the cat shelters closest to his establishment was replied to. Humming, he clicked onto the message. His eyes widening. So much for not getting any further miracles. When the boys returned, Hitoshi was becoming a little more pensive, but was trying his best not to show it. God, it tore at his heart. However, after a quiet chat with him, he'd helped him to work through his tears and then whisked him back upstairs for a quick power nap. Dabi had offered to keep watch over him whilst he did some more online catering courses on their ancient desktop computer in the living room, since Tomra had to go home to complete his own schoolwork. Then they'd had lunch. He'd changed into his black dress pants, white shirt, and red silk tie. His hair was up in a half bun, his face clean-shaven, and together they'd hopped into the taxi he'd ordered. Dabi had been quietly touched when the boy asked for him to come along. The kid cleaned up really well in a similar get-up to his own. The journey to the precinct had been quiet. Well, it wasn't as though anyone sang, laughed, or played car games on the way to such things, was it? God.
Ah, Aizawa-san! Good afternoon.
They'd been greeted, oddly enough, by Lieutenant Shigarame, who'd walked them from the lobby to the small, quiet visiting area. The holding cells in this part of Busutafu were relatively unused, since most of the criminals around these parts were violent, drug-addled, or possessed powerful clerks. This meant, of course, that most were hauled straight off to Tartarus before any due processing, court dates, or trials. He thanked his lucky stars that Kimiko would never be sent to that hellish place.
Usually, you're allowed half-hour visits twice a week, but given the circumstances, I've been able to give you an hour each time,
the beagle-headed man had quietly advised, whilst the boys cautiously looked around the stark corridors, Hitoshi's hands pressing the pictures he'd made to his chest.
Thank you,
he replied, whilst internally he felt like punching something. His ward could only see his mother twice before the trial? A trial that, for legal reasons, thanks to the nature of the criminal acts lodged against her, the boy couldn't attend? Shit!
And here we are.
Sucking in a breath, Shouta nodded at the two guards who opened the bar door for them, the feel of the child grabbing onto his leg, halting him.
Where would you like me to carry you in?
Nodding and being mindful of the precious gifts the child wanted to present, he carefully pulled the tot into his arms and lifted him up before he walked inside. Blessedly, there were no other visitors. Their next visit would be on Thursday at 1100. He'd close the cafe for lunch. It wouldn't be a problem. And in the room, dotted with bolted-down tables and chairs, there sat Kimiko. Toshi? Walking over, he tried his best to smile for them, whilst carefully depositing the tot near his mother, who, thank God, wasn't shackled. He checked to make sure that the mother and son could touch each other. Shigarame had grunted, but allowed it. This was somewhat of a special case, wasn't it? She was, however, wearing a grayed jumpsuit with a number, bold and black, stamped over her heart. Shit! Mommy! Watching as the child he'd eased back to the floor ran the short distance to the woman, who looked tired but relieved, the pallor of her skin much healthier than when he last saw her. Shouta found himself wrapping an arm around Dabi's shoulder as the teen shuffled beside him. Oh, Toshi, look at how handsome you are. Oh, you look just like your daddy, you know. And you drew these for me? They're beautiful, honey. Thank you. Struggling to keep his emotions in check, the cafe owner let out a shaky sigh. The last thing he needed was for him to break down. Maybe he'd call All Might later and ask him to stand there while he punched all of his grief and anger out. He was sure the other wouldn't feel any of his blows, at least.
Aizawa-san, may I have a word with you in private?
Blinking, he turned to the lieutenant, who, the rational part of his mind was telling him, had actually gone out of his way to help. The angry, protective side of his brain, however, wanted to lash out at the sheer ridiculousness of it all. It was a damn good job he hadn't gone into law. Would have ended up killing someone, he was sure. Then, with a quick nod to Dabi, who scowled at the officer before moving to sit on the chair opposite the reunited family members, he walked back towards the doorway where the two guards, unnecessary, needlessly intimidating, were stoically stood.
We've been given a judge for her trial,
the dog-headed man relayed quietly.
All Might's legal team has done the best job that they can, but some of the CCTV footage we've uncovered is, given the circumstances, quite damning.
He sighed, his head shaking.
However, regardless of the sentence, in all honesty, it's in her best interest to plead guilty to the charges brought against her for a more lenient term and the opportunity to join her fellows in speaking out against Okami. She will at least be sent to a medium security prison in Tokyo if she follows this advice as well.
He told him.
On the plus side, The Tokyo Detention House in Katashima offers rehabilitation, educational facilities, and open-air spaces, including a garden that inmates can tend to, he offered. It's considered to be one of the better places to be. Frowning softly, he knew that detention houses were more humane and holistic compared to what they'd been historically, but the whole thing still didn't rest easy on him. He said,
"And you're certain that there's no way she can avoid a sentence? Aizawa-san, does coercion and personal circumstances truly mean so little?"
He pushed quietly for fear of the others hearing him.
Unfortunately, in these kinds of situations, the law is very clear,"
Tsugarame replied, his arms folding.
"And without laws there'd be chaos, even if, as you say, some are long overdue and overhauled,"
he murmured before his shoulders straightening.
"I'll leave you to your visit."
An hour had flown by. Hitoshi told his mother all about the cafe, Mimi-chan's wonderful gift, the cats, and how he'd be having a birthday party
with one of my bestest friends. Danky says he's gonna get us t-shirts that say, "Best birthday bros too." Can you believe it?
Dabi had been mostly quiet, his form clearly uncomfortable. They tried to joke earlier that between the pair of them they could probably wreck the place enough to get all four of them away.
If either of them could drive a getaway car, he might have considered it. Shit. Then, after the boy had explained his drawings, "This is us when we're back together at the cafe, and this is you and me eating onigiri, see?"
He'd gone with Dabi to the vending machine within the relatively large room to get them all a soda. "Shouta-kun?" Kimiko had breathed when they were alone, her hand reaching for his, and after having grasped it, he locked eyes with the royal blue of her irises. I can never thank you enough," she murmured. "Thanks to you, I know that it'll be okay, you know?"
"I swear to you that it won't for nothing,"
he promised.
I only wish I could do more."
"More!" She laughed, her eyes tearing. "Shouta, you're not responsible for me and my mistakes. You offered me more than anyone besides my husband ever has," she told him, her tone fond. "And here you are, looking after the most precious person in my life for me and apologizing after I very nearly got you killed. You mustn't concern yourself with anything that I've brought upon myself," she said, her finger squeezing his. "No one forced me down this road other than myself. I shouldn't have allowed Haruto to dote on me. I should have pushed myself when I was younger and not looked for the quickest and easiest way to make money." She sighed while shaking her head.
"Yep. You can't say that about yourself,"
he breathed.
"Kimiko, you were alone, grieving. You put your child's well-being before your own,"
he told her firmly.
"And no one should be punished for that."
"I would rather be punished than dead," she murmured. "I would rather be here, or somewhere like it, knowing that Toshi is well, and that I'll get to be with him again one day. As someone who can put her shame behind her, as a woman he can be proud of," she added. "Sir Nightai has shown me where I'll be going, and I need you to know, I want you to know, that I'll be working hard while I'm there." She sighed, she stated firmly, "And if you'll have me, I want to work with you. I want to work for you to help you realize your dream." She nodded. "Because your dream is my dream too now. You understand? To help others, to be there for them, to make a difference." She smiled. "And I cannot thank you enough for that now, either." When they left, he told her that she'd always have a place at the Noraneko. Hitoshi had saved his tears until they were back in the taxi, his body curling against his chest while he rubbed his back as Dabi held his hand. God, it had been harrowing, but to see the woman so resolved and so determined had at least given him hope for the future. A future that he could ask Sir Nightai about, but he genuinely didn't dare to. However, as she'd said, she was alive. She was well. She would be looked after when her prison time was concluded, because he would make sure of it. Also, the prison she'd been housed in was only an hour away by train, which meant that he could take Hitoshi to see her every other Sunday, as they were allowed, and thanks to technology, he could video call her once a week too. Small mercies. They'd got into the cafe and gone upstairs together. 2 silly anime movies later saw the boy snoozing in his arms and Dabi leading into his side.
"So, do
Do you think that everyone is, redeemable?
Blinking, because that had come out of nowhere, the cafe owner continued to rub soothingly at the other's shoulder.
Well, that depends.
He replied thoughtfully.
The most important factor is if they truly want to change, what they'll do to make those changes, and how the people they may have wronged could feel about it.
He added,
Personally, I'd like to think that the percentage of people who could change for the better is greatly higher than those who can.
he admitted.
Why do you ask?
When I decided to run away from home,
The team said quietly.
I did it because I was scared about what I might become if I stayed, but I left my mother and younger siblings behind.
He continued after a swallow.
They're safe, in terms of having food, drink, a roof over their heads, tutors and things.
He added.
But my father is loud, brashy, violent. He's a spare the rod, spoil the child kind of guy, and he was only interested in us if our quirks were something he could develop.
He stated, carefully listening, his fingers keeping up their calming rhythm, Shouta nodded along. God. He knew that something like this was behind his lodger's state when he'd first met him. Shit. Now there were 2 people on his hit list. Boss Sama was currently at the top, but that could change.
He's wealthy, powerful, and I want to do something, but listening to Sugarame today, I need evidence against him, and I don't know where to start,
Sucking in a breath before releasing it, the older of the 3 nodded.
We can hire a lawyer.
He advised.
We can
Show.
The other cutting quickly.
It's not that I don't appreciate the offer,
He said, those turquoise eyes looking to him.
but I'm not ready to face him or anything yet. And since they're all right for the most part,
He carried on.
I can't. I don't.
Okay.
He offered gently.
I know it's taken a great deal of strength to even bring this up, Dabi.
He acknowledged.
And you'll have no pressure from me, all right? Only support.
He stated firmly.
Believe it or not, I know how that feels.
He explained, his eyes briefly closing.
You know that I grew up in a care center, but what I don't really talk about is the manager who was meant to take care of us. He furthered, Itsu-san was a mean drunk, and since I was the oldest, I tried my best to love and look after the 4 boys who lived with me.
He revealed.
God, there were times, so many times, when I beat myself up because surely I could have done something. Surely I could have found an adult to give a damn, but it wasn't until I was offered a full scholarship to high school that I felt I had enough teachers fighting in my corner to finally tell the truth and get that bitch fired.
He said.
It's something that I wrestle with from time to time, that I knew that I had to become someone who'd be listened to before any real good could be done.
He reasoned. Then, their eyes locking once more.
Your father, whomever he is, made the biggest mistake of his life when he chose not to love, honor, and value you for who you are, Dabi.
He stated.
And you must never forget that, all right?